Let's take a minute to hear a word from our sponsor for this week's Ag Report, Elite Tire.
Elite Tire and Automotive. Ever have one of those days and just need a little hand? Well, with our remote services, we'll just hop right on it. Get you back on the road quick and easy. With automotive services to cover all your mechanical needs. Need that state inspection done? Well, we can do that too. So roll on in and see a friendly face. Give us a call and we can be right on the spot to assist you. So trust the friendly folks down at Elite Tire and Automotive, 972-775-1055.
Now let's join our host, John Paul Dineen, in the studio with this week's Ag Report.
Howdy folks, welcome to this week's Ag Report. This week we have special guest Mark Arnold with us with AgriLife Extension Service. And this week we're going to talk a little bit about the Ellis County Crop Tour. Now it's not exclusive to Ellis County, it goes on in many counties across the state. And you may see advertisements for spring crop tours or summer crop tours, even fall crop tours. And you may think, well, why in the world are them guys just riding around looking out the window at crops? You know, is it like looking at Christmas lights or something like that? But so we're going to kind of give you some more details in there. It's a whole lot more than just looking at Christmas lights. Mark, I appreciate you joining with us today. And you just recently had a crop tour. So kind of tell us what crops were on the menu, you might say, at that.
Well, it's more of an educational program for these producers. And we have a lot of our specialists, cropping specialists and disease and plant pathology specialists and entomologists and so forth on hand that work for Texas A&M AgriLife and that are out of College Station and some of our other research places. We try to have a handful of these guys on hand to kind of help and work with these producers and make it an educational event while we're riding around looking at some of these. And so we actually had our summer crop tour this past Tuesday, the 29th, and we had right at about 40 area producers. Most of them are from Ellis County area. We had a few from Dallas County, Johnson County, even Navarra, as well as Hill County that were there as well. And we primarily looked at some corn and milo. Some of our mainly looked at our grain crops. We talked a little bit about some cotton and also some soybeans and sunflowers. But the main tour stops were, again, our corn variety trial and also our sorghum variety trials. And those producers got a chance to look at and kind of evaluate in the field about 14 different varieties of corn and about 14 different varieties of sorghum that a lot of these seed companies are trying to push for this area, and or AgriLife Extension is looking at evaluating them for their for how well they will work in this area.
Now you mentioned about 14 different varieties. And, you know, a lot of times there is a myth going around that people think that we as producers don't have choices in the crops and the varieties that we raise. They think that, you know, the big companies make us plant a particular thing. And that's not true. And that's what, we are out there to see in real life, these different varieties competing against each other, because you are a totally unbiased, presenter. You put on these trials. These companies provide these to you because they want to look good in the county. They want to hopefully have some business, coming up, but you don't have any skin in the game necessarily with any of these companies. You're just comparing them out there, and, no 2 years are the same. So these are important for us to see, like this year, how these plants handle, water stress that we've had, wet feet, you might say, and then in dry years to see how they compete against, the drier weather and that kind of stuff.
You bet. We want to be unbiased on that, but it's a symbiotic relationship. Those seed companies, they're not going to be able to sell anything if it's not going to work for these producers. If these producers can't put money in their pocket from this, then, it's not going to do them any good, and they're not going to want to buy that. So, it's a good symbiotic relationship with the seed companies, with the producers, and with AgriLife Extension kind of in the middle, being able to offer this unbiased testing of these different varieties. And again, and you're exactly right. No one year is the same, but what we encourage producers to do is to look at multiple years data of these varieties. And the majority of these varieties, we do get to see year in and year out, with over say a 3 to 5 or 7 year period of time to see how they actually work here in this North Texas Blackland area of Ellis County over a period of time there. Because, as everybody knows, one year we may be wet like we are right now, and next year we may be bone dry. And so we need something that's going to hit right in the middle and work as well as it can in a variety of conditions.
You talk about, gathering that data. So I have participated in test plots before. And so what that looks like to the folks is, you have partnered with a producer somewhere, and then at harvest time, you'll bring out a special wagon, call it a weigh wagon, sample wagon, whatever. And they will cut those individual strips, put them in that weigh wagon, and then you have you a good sharp pencil or a couple of pencils that day, because you do a lot of figuring on each and every one of those varieties and weigh them out. You calculate how long of the rows they are, how many rows and how many tenths of an acre that calculates up. And then you put all that together in information that later in the year you send out, and it lays it all out there. A lot of times, it'll show the fertilizer, the nutrients that were put in there, so that you can compare that, how it was put in, the dates that the different applications were made, because that's important in that life cycle of the plant, whether you got those nutrients early or late season. And a lot of that depends on whether it was dry enough to get in the field, to do that, or if you had a rain to kind of activate some of those nutrients.
You bet. Not only are we evaluating these different varieties for actual poundage and yield or bushel yield, but we're also evaluating them for insect resistance, disease tolerance, and things like that. And so it's a broad range, and it reaches out and gets the full gamut of evaluating these different varieties. And it's kind of always enjoy the days that we harvest those test plots. We'll actually have the measuring wheel out, and we'll measure those plots, and we'll get the combine, and they'll actually harvest those strips or that noted area, and we'll put it into a special wagon, and then it'll auger over into the rest of the crop there, or rest of the farmer's crop. But again, we will test each of those varieties individually, and we'll weigh and measure those individually. And so again, that's always kind of an enjoyable day. We get those producers out there, and we get those seed company reps out there, and it's some friendly competition, but we're getting some really good educational material out of that.
Right. You mentioned insects, and several years ago, sugarcane aphids really wasn't something we watched out for here. And the year that they came up, just by happenstance in those Milo trials, we kind of saw some early natural resistance to those things that I don't think anybody, was really looking for. I know I wasn't really watching out for that. They didn't really come this far north. And that was just something that we noticed that year in that, bit of a crisis that we had with the way those things moved in here, and were causing lots of trouble for hay production, gumming up hay cutters, gumming up combines at harvest, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the yellow sugarcane aphid's kind of relatively a new pest, but we've been dealing with it for a number of years now. It's no different as far as the damage it occurs. It's really no different than a regular aphid. This problem is, or it's such a problematic insect, is that the reproduction rate of these aphids is just exponential. And when they get so many of them out there in the field over a short period of time, that's where they really start doing some damage to those crops, and primarily our grain sorghum and those grain sorghum related species, whether it be hay grazers, even Johnson grass and our forage sorghums and things like that. But we are starting to find some varieties that are genetically resistant, and that's kind of what we're looking at. And a lot of those a lot of the varieties that we looked at on our grain sorghum stock are showing and are being rated and are showing some pretty good resistance to the yellow sugarcane aphid. So that's going to be our best bet. You know, that saves us having to go out there and use these expensive chemicals, etc., that may or may not work for us. So if we can get that good genetic resistance built in, that just really helps us out, helps that producer out on down the line there.
The aphid is kind of that old wives' tale of the species is all female and they're born pregnant.
That's exactly right.
Because
we laugh about that, but your entomologist, they'll look at you with a straight face and say that's what's going on. That's why the reproductive rate is so exponential with this particular insect. And it's one of these, like I said, popped up on us probably 10 or 12 years ago, I guess. And they have progressively and steadily moved north, and we see them come in every year on the southern winds, the southerly winds that come out of South Texas and northern Mexico. And like I said, on good years, they will get up here. A good year for them, they will get up this far north, and we have to deal with them.
And last but not least, most of the time on these tours, you offer some CEUs, some continuing education units for folks. So even if you have folks listening today that aren't necessarily row crop producers, maybe they are, hay producers, beef cattle producers, and they're needing to get some CEU credits, these crop tours are a good way to get some of those.
You bet. Most all of our educational programs that we offer, we're able to offer some continuing education units for the Texas Department of Agriculture license holders, whether they have a private applicator's license, a non-commercial license, and or even a commercial license. They are able to get these continuing education credits. And as far as the majority of our livestock and forage and row crop producers, they have what we would call a licensed, a private applicator's license from Texas Department of Agriculture, and they're required to get 15 CEU credits or continuing education credits over a 5-year period in order to renew their license. And so most all of our programs like this, we are able to offer some continuing education that will apply to those licenses. And so again, just want to encourage anybody, if you're needing those hours, TDA wants you to get that education before you renew that license. So we can sure work with you from that standpoint.
A wealth of information, Mark. I appreciate you taking time to chat with us today and kind of give us some insight, of what those tours and some of the details of what that looks. And as always, if folks have questions about, the CEUs, about their crop, grassland health, reach out to the Ellis County AgriLife Extension office there. And I know that you and your staff will be happy to chat with them and get them some help.
You bet. We appreciate the opportunity to visit with you in this format. And again, I encourage folks, if you have some questions, feel free to give us a call. Our physical address for our office is at 701 South I-35E here in Waxahachie. And our phone number is 972-825-5175. And so feel free to give us a holler.
Awesome. Y'all take care now.